What's up, guys? It's Mr. Frosti here, aka the People's Supplier, and today we're talking about how I made this from random noises out of my newborn son. Ooh, sheesh. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and get started in talking about how I use random noises from my son's voice to make an entire beat. Every instrument that you hear in this beat was sampled specifically from my son's voice, and we're going to be using two videos to make these samples from. The first one was last week's video, which you can check out. It was me talking about how I quit social media, and he kind of interrupted in the middle, and we used a lot of sounds from there. And then the second video that we used to get some samples was when we were in the hospital and the doctor was checking his heart. So we'll start with, let's see, the intro sound here that I used. This is a little transition noise that I made out of his voice that I used for the intro. And to create that, we used Reason's Mimic Sampler. We drop it down here and we look at this, and we'll go to our first slot. And in the first slot, you can see that I have a sample loaded. The sample sounds like this. And basically what I did with the Mimic Sampler, I kind of slowed down the speed a little bit, if you look here, and I reversed the flow of the sound so that when it plays in reverse. So what else I did for the intro, if we come down here, we can look at our effects chain. I didn't do too much. I threw a chorus ensemble on there, which is just just a chorus effect. And for this one, I used BBD. Honestly, I do not know what any of these mean. I just know they all sound different. And I turned up the drive wet a little bit, made sure it was wide, and just threw a little chorus on there for it to sound cooler as far as the transition goes. And I used Valhalla Supermassive to give sort of this wide, spacey effect on the intro there. Nothing too serious there. I just really like the sound of him crying, and then I reversed it, bounced it to the track, kind of stretched it so that it fit the intro that I had for the tempo at 145. So that's the intro part. And then now let's talk about the next instrument in our song here that we hear, and I called it the Breathy Bounce. So to create that breathy bounce, we used another sample from the I Quit Social Media video. We go here and we'll listen to it, and it sounds like this. I know, cute, right? And I chopped it up really super duper short. This one, I also turned the reverse on here, as you can see, and we did the advanced stretch type mode. And we also turned it on the preserve transients so that as we played it more, it didn't take away too much from the noise of it. So that's it playing backwards. I made sure that the poly mode was on. I brought the pitch down and the speed down so that we could get kind of a cooler, kind of a longer sound first and foremost, and then like a cooler pitch sound. And then I put a little bit of filter on there, not too much, but I put a little low pass filter on there so that we wouldn't have too many of the highs. I brought down the decay a bunch so that instead of it being a long sound, it was more of a plucky type sound. I added a bit of noise with this effect module here, turned up the mix to about 56.2%, and then I believe that's all I did. There's a little bit of EQ here, brought down some of the high cut, low cut. I mean, it does the same as the low pass filter a little bit, but just cutting off on the highs and lows. So here I kind of did the same thing as I did with the intro effects, but nothing too serious. I threw some distortion from Kilohertz on there. I love Kilohertz's plugins. I definitely definitely, this isn't a sponsored video, but I definitely encourage people to go get Kilohertz's plugins. They're great. They're low on DSP. Andrew Huang has a video where he shows how he used the phase plant to make instruments and stuff like that. I mean, Kilohertz does a really great job. Sorry, this is a plug for Kilohertz. But yeah, so I use their distortion. It's one of my favorite things to use. You'll probably see it a lot more in the rest of this. And then I threw another quartet ensemble on there, but this time I used a different chorus effect, the FFT, and this one kind of gives it more of a spacey chorus sound. Again, I don't know what any of these things stand for. I wish I did. One day I will, and we'll talk about it more in depth. And yeah, and I think that's it for this particular instrument. Bear with me, guys. This is my first time explaining how I made a beat, so it's new to me. So that's the beautiful pluck sounds that we have. Okay, so let's look at the next instrument now. This is what the pad whine sounds like. And for that, I used a grain sample manipulator, which if you've seen any of my Make a Patch videos, you would know this is one of my favorite samplers to use. It's just an amazing sampler. You can get a lot of sounds out of it. So I won't go too in depth with what I did here. I didn't really use this bottom area like most people do, but I went and I used the spectral grains. I don't remember if I changed the FFT size or not, but I definitely turned the oscillator on and I brought the level down a lot so that we could focus on the sample more than the level. This is the sample that I use for it. I really zeroed in on a small part here, and I turned on the forward-backward loop so that we kind of got a sound that was continuous. I brought the speed down to 28.1% so we can kind of get a longer stretch on that sound. I made sure that I found the correct key because it found the key to the start of the sample, but I wanted over here in the middle of the sample. So you could hear in the sample that his voice hits probably like 3 different notes. So I manually found the pitch that I was looking for. I put a little bit of a low pass filter, on here, but not too much. And then we brought the attack up to give it more of a pad feel so that it takes a little longer to hit. And we brought the decay down so that it would fall off, you know, over time. And that's kind of what gave us our pad fill there. And then in the effects chain, all I did was added channel EQ. I took out some of the mid frequencies here, well, the low mid frequencies here, and boosted some of the high mid frequencies, and then took a low pass and a high pass filter and kind of cut off the higher and lower ends of it. So we got more of the middle sound and got that pad sound that we wanted. So yeah, that was our pad whine. And then the last instrument in here that we made as an instrument is going to be our smooth bass. Now this one, I'm not going to lie, the bass was the most annoying part to make. But that's because, I mean, he's a baby and his voice isn't that bassy. So this is what it sounds like. And to get that, I used this sample here, and I put it into the mimic sampler. The sample sounds like this. I know, right? How did you make a bass out of that? I kind of brought in the area to where it plays just this little part right here. And then I turned on the loop so that in this little red area right here, it would loop the end so that it will make the sample a little bit longer. I made sure that it was taped instead of advanced so that we got more of a stretched sound out of it. I put a low pass frequency on there because I didn't want a lot of the high sounds. We were trying to make a bass here. I made sure that it had a long enough decay to feel like an 808, kind of how an 808 decays, but still have that, well, honestly, let's not lie. I try to make it sound more like a sub bass than anything else. So like a hybrid between a bass guitar and an 808. I added some low res effect on here. It's not really that much, 31.2%. And then the mix is at 35.9%. And I believe that's all I did here inside of the mimic sampler. Then I bounced that after I played the notes, and here's my effects chain. So this is probably the longest effects chain that I have for any of the instruments in here. The first effect I used on here was the submarine stereo, and basically what this does is it adds sub frequencies, 12 semitones and 24 semitones, which is 1 octave and 2 octaves below the frequencies that are already present in the sample that you're using. It's kind of weird how this is set up, but I made sure that it was catching the frequencies between 32 and 76 hertz. I didn't want it to be overly bassy. I just wanted kind of that lower bass part to be in there and to let the original sample shine through as the higher bass part. Turned up the drive a little bit here, turned up the dynamics so that it feels squished. Made sure it's a mono sub. I think that might be a stereo sub. I haven't quite figured out yet. When you click on it, I mean, when it says stereo sub if it's stereo, or when you click on it and it says mono sub if it's mono, I don't know. I haven't figured it out. But for what I was going for, this particular setting sounded the best while it was on stereo, while I believe it's on stereo sub. And then turn the mix up between the sample and this sub stereo plugin, kind of giving the sub a little bit more room than the sample, and then raise the output because it was really quiet. And of course, when I raised the output, it made everything super duper extra super duper loud. So I had to throw a compressor on there, threw a channel EQ on there to get rid of some of the crazy frequencies, like the high frequencies. As you can see, my low pass filter is brought all the way down to 228.9 hertz. So I cut out everything up at the top there. And then I cut out some of the low frequencies that don't matter as far as what we can actually hear, and that were just kind of muddying up the dB here. And then I threw a pulverizer on there, which is an amazing distortions / compressor. Did a little bit more low pass filtering on here. Turned the resonance peak up, squashed it, put a little dirt on there. And then, of course, the dry wet is always, for me, it's always more towards the sound I created versus the original sound, so it mixed pretty well. I threw some distortion on here with the kilohertz. Again, we're back here. My favorite distortion to use is Saturate. And then a really cool plugin, Vitamin Stereo, which is kind of like an EQ booster / compressor, but not. But really cool plugin. It really helps add color and texture to your sound. I use it a lot for mastering more than just individual instruments, but I felt like it could be useful in this case because the bass needed bass. So I used a preset called Fat Bass, and I kind of tweaked it just a little bit, closed up the stereo width on it so that it was a lot tighter, and that's how we got to our nice little bass sound. All right, so now that we talked about all of that, let's talk about our drums. Really simple sounding. They have a really lo-fi kind of gritty feel. The kick sample was from the Heartbeat video, so let's go ahead and talk about that. So if we look here in our Kong drum designer, we look at our kick sample sounded originally like, that's not true. That's not what it originally sounded like. So we go in here and we find our original kick sample here. Gosh, where is it?
Sometime later.
Here's what the kick originally sounded like. That's from when we were in the hospital. We were getting his heartbeat. It was adorable. This was when he was still in the tummy. He wasn't born yet. But I already knew I was gonna make this video, darn it. We got it to sound like this, with a bunch of effects. We look at the first chain of effects for the heartbeat kick. So I'm just gonna go ahead and let you guys know I go through a lot of processing when it comes to making these noises and these sounds that I like to make. So we're gonna kind of speed through what I did with the drums because it's just a lot of stuff. So I used the vocal bender to bring down the formant and bring up the pitch just a little bit. Use the submarine stereo to go ahead and add that bass within the range of 42 hertz and 240 hertz. Used a KSHMR Essentials kick plugin to add some like kick feel to it, add some transients, a little bit of pressure, compression. I took down some of the air, but you know, nothing serious. And then of course ended it off with an EQ to tighten up the frequencies and the sound, and then a compressor to tighten up the overall sound of the kick. So that's what it sounded like after these first chain of effects. And then, after I did that, I threw it into my Kong and went through another chain of effects. I used a supercharger from Native Instruments. It's just basically a cool compressor. I added punch and dirt to it and turned up the compression by just a tiny bit. And then we ran it through our pulverizer, which again is our amazing compression and distortion plugin, all kind of wrapped into one. Added some squash and some dirt, some tone, brought down the frequency a little bit and a little bit of resonance on the peak there. And then of course ran it through some EQ to tighten it up again, and channel dynamics, which is basically another reason compressor to just tighten up the kick overall and make sure that it wasn't clipping too much. So that's how I did that. The Paci Snare, this was a fun one to do. Let's see if I can see where the snare came from. Oh gosh, I probably won't be able to. I ran through this part pretty fast, not thinking about how I was gonna have to explain it later. So with that being said, I don't remember exactly where the snare sounds came from. I do have the sample though, and I have a sticky note here that tells us where in our video from last week I found the sample for the snare. So let's see if I can look. It says at 3 minutes and 32 seconds. So let's see, 3 minutes and 32 seconds. So right about here, that's the sample I used to get the snare sound. And I went straight into editing that, and then also there was a Paci Snare layer that I also used. If you listen super duper close there, he makes a sound. And I took that, I put a lot of effects on that to make it sound like this. And we can kind of go through the effects chain for that if you want, but it's probably extremely extra. Oh, well, never mind. I guess not. I guess that's not what I did. Yep, so I don't know how exactly I got to that, but I layered that with my original Paci Snare sound, and then I added a bunch of effects. For the effects chain, I used kilohertz distortion. This time I used the overdrive instead of saturation. Still one of my favorites. I used the one knob pressure from Wave Studios just to give it a little kind of boosted sound. Then I used the pulverizer to squash a little bit, add some dirt, and take out some of the lower frequencies. I actually used the high pass filter instead this time. Then the EQ, of course, to tighten some things up. Added a quartet chorus ensemble on there using the BBD effect again, but just really subtle, so it kind of gave that multiple snappy feel that you get from really nice lo-fi snares and regular snares, and then compression to top it all off. And then for the pacifier hat, the Paci Hat, which these are all noises basically made out of him sucking on the pacifier, I used the same Paci Snare, and then I also used a click breath, which is at 343. So I used really subtle sounds from when he was making noises. The 343 were over here, and apparently it sounded like this. So yeah, it was that quiet of a sound. And I layered that with the Paci Snare, and then we went through all of these effects here. Some distortion, a little bit of EQ, and a pulverizer to top it off, and we got these nice hi-hat sounds. Got some nice hi-hat sounds out of that. So yeah. And that's pretty much the process I went through of making the beat out of my son's random noises voice. So now we'll go ahead and listen to it all together. And there's a special treat in it for you guys. I decided to make a song to it. So yeah, here's the beat with lyrics over it.
Hi guys. I've got some really big news. Yeah. Said I got a son now, and he got a sister and mommy and daddy, and we so in love now. Got me wiping boogies and changing these diapers, yeah, we having fun now. Got us waking up every hour or two from the sun up to sundown. Yeah, we got a son now. Ooh, and though I'm still imperfect, I feel like I am so in purpose. And now no matter how I work it, it's like God told us that we're worth it. I know he's a gift, he learning quick, he growing strong, he's getting big. All of the nurses and doctors in love, and I see why, he's cute as they get. Mama, she smart, he get it legit. He got my eyes, he got her lips, always protected cause he got his sis. Man, still can't believe he exists. Man, I feel so blessed to be his dad. So I promise to do the best I can. Cause I got a son now. I got a son now. I got a son now. Yeah. I got a son now. I got a son.
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed the song as much as I enjoyed making it. It was so fun making a beat out of my son's random noises. I am such a happy and proud dad. I already have a daughter, my stepdaughter, and I love her just as much. And we are planning to make a video where we make a beat together later down the road, so look out for that. But yeah, if you guys want to just listen to the song only or download it, or however that goes, I'm going to make it available on SoundCloud and Bandcamp. I have both of those links down below in the description. If you want more cool stuff like this, let me know in the comments. If you think that I should drop a sample pack from my son's voice and stuff, drop it in the comments. I'll do it. I got nothing better to do. I will do it. If you have any suggestions on any other type of videos I should make, please don't hesitate to drop it in the comments. I appreciate all of you guys who are here watching, supporting. You guys are awesome. Like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, and as always, thanks for hanging out with Mr. Frosty, aka the People's Supplier. I'll see you next time.